Hi, welcome back to Absinthe and Ink. I'm MJ, and I've got a stack of books and a 4-day weekend. And that made me wonder, just how many books could I read in 4 days? And if you want to know the answer, stick around because we're both about to find out. Now, I have to start off by saying that I lost the original footage that I shot for the introduction. So that's why I had to refilm it now. Now, I am going to show you the books a little bit later on in the video that I'm reading for this challenge. But unfortunately, the original video that I shot is no longer. It's going to be a rainy, dreary weekend, so it's a perfect weekend to, well, do a book challenge. And I've got my books picked out. I'm going to show them to you right now. The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. Beloved by Toni Morrison. The Resurrectionist by A. Ray Dunlap. And Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. Now, if I manage to get through all these books in 4 days, then I will add a fifth. But I'm not going to tell you what that one is unless I actually finish all 4 books. Now, I'm not going to read 4 days straight for 24 hours. Obviously, I can't do that because I have to do things like, well, eat and sleep and take care of my pets. But I do plan to have my eyes on a page for as many hours during the day as I can for the next 4 days. Now, I've got my books ready, but I have to do something really important first, and that's make some tea. So the tea that you see on your screen right now is from a little shop out in Oregon called Blackbird Tea and Tales. I am not sponsored by them. They did not send me this tea for free. As a matter of fact, they don't even know I'm talking about them in this video. But if you want to enjoy some good tea while supporting a small independent book and tea shop, I'll put the link to their shop down below so you can go check them out. All right, well, I've got my book and I've got my tea. And the first book that I'm going to start out with is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, because I love a good Victorian ghost story. And I've heard this one is pretty high on the spooky level. And plus, it's the shortest of all the books, starting at 106, or rather ending at 164 pages. And I figure it's probably a good one to kind of get myself warmed up for some of the other longer books that are going to follow this one. Now, the description on the back of this book states that Arthur Cripps is an up-and-coming London solicitor who is sent to Crithen Gifford, a faraway town in the windswept salt marshes beyond Nine Lives Causeway, to attend the funeral and settle the affairs of a client, Mrs. Alice Drablow of the Causeway, wreathed in fog and mystery, but Kipps is unaware of the tragic secrets that lie hidden beneath its sheltered windows. The routine business trip he anticipated quickly takes a horrifying turn when he finds himself haunted by a series of mysterious sounds and images. A rocking chair in a deserted nursery, the eerie sound of a pony and trap, a child's scream in the fog, and most terrifying of all, a ghostly woman dressed all in black. It's not me, though. It's 9:45 a.m. on Thursday. Let the reading commence. Okay, well, I'm about halfway through this book here. And I have to say the story is really drawing me in. Now, I'm not going to do any spoilers in this video, But there is one character that's kind of come into the story, and his name is Keckwick. And he doesn't say a whole lot, and he's responsible for driving the main character, who's the young attorney, back and forth between the town and the house where he is doing the work for the recently deceased woman. And there's something about this character that makes me suspect that there might be more to him than flesh and blood. Now, I don't know that because I'm only halfway through, but what I can say is that this is turning out to be a really, really fantastic story. Wow, there are so many things about this book that I really liked. As I said earlier, when I was about at the halfway mark, it was the environment that she created, the sense of feeling like you're actually there. She describes the fog and the damp and the sounds of the wind, because it's always the sounds that are the scariest thing, especially when you don't know what those sounds are or where they're coming from. The characters, some of the characters were flat. They were obviously support characters, especially in the beginning when he's talking about his family and his stepchildren. They kind of disappear for the rest of the story. But the main character and the other characters, like Mr. Daly, those characters are absolutely fantastic. They're very dimensional and very real feeling. The spookiness, yeah. This book was pretty spooky. There were times where I was feeling very anxious. I did get shivers and goosebumps and all that. So, as far as I'm concerned, it met all the expectations that I had going into it. The writing is fantastic. It's a very easy read. Even my dog thinks so. And, good timing there, buddy, because also, if you're a dog lover, you're going to really enjoy this book as well. Right? Right, buddy? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Mommy's making a video. Okay. I'll take you out in a minute. Okay. All right. Yeah. But that being said, this is definitely a 4-star read. I would highly recommend it, and I'm just so glad that I read this. So now, before I get into the next book, I gotta take my dog for a walk. Hey, buddy. The next book up is Beloved by Toni Morrison. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I want to read this book. One being that it's a banned book. Apparently, some people don't like the language. They find it offensive. They don't like the themes, and some people question the historical accuracy of the novel. The other reason I want to read this book is because, well, I've been reading for a long time. And the fact that I have never read a Toni Morrison book just seems really wrong. And I need to correct that because I hear that her prose is beautiful and that her stories are are heavy, but they're compelling and they're the kind of thing that really make you think about things a little bit differently. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's one of the wonderful things that books do. They challenge the way we think about things. And the back cover also, the description of the book also has me really intrigued. And that states that staring unflinchingly into the abyss of slavery, this spellbinding novel transforms history into a story as powerful as Exodus and as intimate as a lullaby. Sethi, its protagonist, was born a slave and escaped to Ohio, but 18 years later, she is still not free. She has too many memories of Sweet Home, the beautiful farm where so many hideous things happened, and Sethi's new home is haunted by the ghost of her baby who died nameless and whose tombstone is engraved with a single word: beloved. This one is gonna this one is gonna stay with me for a while, and it's gonna take me a little while to get my head around it. But as far as a rating, I would definitely give this. I would give Toni Morrison's writing 5 stars, but I would give the book 4 stars based on my personal experience with it. Some people may have a different experience when they read this book, but I'm going to give this I'm going to give it 4.5 because Morrison's writing is so fantastic. So, Beloved by Toni Morrison. This was book number 2. On to book number 3. Hi there, it's future me butting in here because during the editing process, I somehow managed to erase a big part of the review that I did for Beloved. And in a way, I'm kind of thankful for that because I've had a few days to sit with this book and think about these characters. And I have to say, out of all the 4 books that I read, the characters in this book are still with me. When I think about the characters of Sethi and Denver and Paul D and Baby Suggs and the adversity and the challenges and the absolute grief that these people experienced and their strength to carry on and make the best of what they have is so amazing and admirable. There are small windows within this book where the characters get to experience some moments of joy and happiness. And what Toni Morrison does is those small windows are such a huge contrast to the majority of their lives and their experiences. So those small windows of happiness that they experience are like 1,000 times in contrast to the other things that have happened to them, especially Sethi. And I think Toni Morrison does such a fantastic job of making that point, making the point that these characters have such little joy in their life that the things that we take for granted as just everyday events are things that mean everything to these characters. And I think that even though I will never really be able to connect with these characters because I will never have experienced the things that they have, but Toni Morrison still has the ability to make me feel that pain and that suffering and the tragedy that these characters go through. Now, this is a really heavy, disturbing book, but it's one that I highly recommend because when you read something like this, which is based on history and events, it really puts your life in perspective because we all have hardships, but none of us are going to experience the things that these characters did. And for that reason, this is an incredibly powerful book. All right, we are still on day 2 and just starting book 3, The Resurrectionist by A. Ray Dunlop. I'm looking forward to getting into this one, and I'm going to do that right now. There were a lot of things about this book that I liked, and there were some things about this book that I wasn't crazy about. The things that I wasn't crazy about was the fact that there were 2 characters in the beginning who I think could have been really strong characters in the story, and I kept waiting for that to happen. And towards the end, it seemed like it was going to happen, like those characters were going to finally come through, and then they didn't, and that was kind of disappointing. But what I will say is the 2 main characters, James and Nye, they are wonderful. They are fantastic. And I love the romance that develops between them. I think the romance was really well done. It was tastefully presented. One of the other things that I didn't like, I shouldn't say I didn't like it. One of the things, well, yeah, actually this I didn't like, was the fact that something towards the end of the book, maybe more towards the middle part of the end, was it was just such a obvious trope to use in a book like this. And I kind of knew when that particular character was introduced that that's where it was going to go. Now, these are small criticisms. Otherwise, the book I thought was fantastic. I thought she did a great job with the historical representation of the resurrectionists. Some of it, she seemed to play with the timeline a little bit, but that's okay. It worked. She wove it in well with the rest of the story. So I want to say thank you to A. Ray Dunlop for really doing your homework on the resurrectionists and presenting them in a what I thought was a pretty historically accurate light. Now the characters of James and Nye, they weren't going to be typical resurrectionists. So there she was romancing the trade a little bit. I like the fact that she worked Burke and Hare into the story. I thought she did a good job of doing that. That was actually really clever the way that she did that. So all in all, I'm going to go ahead and give this 3.5 stars. So we're at the almost the end of day 3, and we're getting ready to start book 4. All right, here we are, book 4, Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. Well, good morning. It is about just before 8 o'clock this morning. I didn't film uh, any video last night because, well, I basically forgot. And by the time I remembered, I was halfway off to Dreamland, so I thought I would just skip the update from last night. And I really didn't do a whole lot of reading because I was just tired from reading all day. But I did get a little bit into book number 4, Wild Dark Shore, and it is day number 4. So I'm right on target here. I am about, let's see, I am about 30 pages into this. So I've got a little bit of ways to go. I think this book is just over 300 pages. I don't think it's the longest book. The longest book that I've done was Beloved. And I think the second longest book was The Resurrectionist. So this should be very doable. I don't know if I'm going to make it to a fifth book, but there's only one way we're going to find out, and that is for me to get cracking on this one. All right, well, that was the end of Wild Dark Shore. It is just about 2 o'clock. And if you're thinking that I read this book quickly, I did. And there's a reason why I was able to read this book so quickly. And it's because a lot of the chapters are like this. They're these pages, these single pages. This book, the author has set it up so you have different perspectives. You're in each character's head. And this is, I don't know if I like that or not. The shifting perspectives. They're not really communicating with each other. What I did like about the book is that the characters' emotions and their connections with each other are tied very closely to the island and the nature surrounding that island. It is a story of survival. It is a story of isolation and the need for human connection. The emotions and the feelings of these characters are very much like the raw, screaming wind and rain that is taking place on the island. Now, the way I feel about this book is that I thought it was very good, but I didn't love it. And I've seen the reviews, and people really seem to love this. Some people say that this book changed their life. I didn't have that experience with this. The ending was not something I saw coming, and I thought it was well done. But overall, probably 3.5 stars, because one thing I will say about this book is that the writing is very elegant. Now, that being said, I don't think the book was really just my thing. I had a little trouble connecting with some of the characters, with the exception of one who is the young boy. Orly is his name. But the rest of the characters, I just didn't bond with them for some reason. So while this is a good book and it deserves the praise that it's gotten, it just wasn't for me. So there we go. 4 books in 4 days. And I have to say that I really enjoyed this challenge. I enjoyed reading the different genres and the different writers. And these all happen to be female writers, which is, of course, awesome. And if I have to pick a favorite book, it's going to be The Woman in Black. I think that was my favorite book. I liked the characters, and I loved the story. I loved the suspense and the creepiness and the gothic settings and the dog, and I loved everything pretty much about this book. If I had to pick a second favorite, it would be Beloved. Even though the book left me feeling kind of funny and a little uncomfortable, I'm going to make that my second book specifically for that reason, because this is a powerful book. In third place, I'd have to say The Resurrectionist, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And in fourth place would be, well, Wild Dark Shore. Again, I didn't not like this book, but I didn't really like it either. Now, I said that if I finished all 4 books, I would start a 5th. And I'm going to start that 5th one shortly. I'm going to take a little break here and then start the 5th one. Now, the 5th one is one that I am not going to finish during this weekend. I'm going to start it, but there's no way I'm going to finish it because it's just too big. And it is something completely outside of anything I've read before. This is not a genre I'm really very familiar with. Neither is my cat. But it's one that I've been wanting to explore and get into. So I'm going to start Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. And I'm really looking forward to this because I feel like this might be the gateway into a whole new universe, a whole new genre of books for me to get into and enjoy. So I'm looking forward to this one. I will do a review of it when I finish reading it. But thanks for joining me. I really enjoyed doing this, and I think I'd like to do this again at some point. It was a lot of work, and it was a lot of reading and a lot of videoing and editing, but I got there in the end, and I'm pretty proud of myself because I'm new to this, but I'm learning, and I learned a lot from this video. So thanks for coming on this journey with me. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.